Your brother will handle the business from now on. You were never meant for this. That's what my father said, his voice slicing through the lawyer's office like a blade. The words weren't just cold. They were deliberate, calculated, crafted to strip me bare in front of polished wood and heavy blinds. The contract slid toward me, a silent verdict, and the air itself seemed to thicken, pressing against my lungs. I remember staring at the rattling blinds, wondering if the city beyond could hear the quiet shattering of my world. I should introduce myself. My name is Marissa Hale. I'm 27, and I've learned something most people don't want to believe. Betrayal doesn't come from outsiders. It comes from the people who know you best, the ones you trust most. That afternoon, I sat frozen, my eyes locked on the documents that didn't just erase my claim to wealth. They erased my name, my history, my years of sweat and sacrifice. My place at the family table was gone, replaced by a line of ink that read, Lucas Hale, sole inheritor and director of the family company. Lucas, my brother. He leaned back in his chair as if it were a throne, grinning faintly, already basking in the crown my grandfather had built with blood and grit. He didn't even meet my eyes when he spoke. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Just walk away. His words carried the weight of finality. Walk away. Leave. Exile. Handed to me by both my brother and my father. My mother never raised her head. She sat still, eyes fixed on the floor, as if silence could wash her hands clean of what she had allowed. The betrayal in her stillness was louder than anything she could have said. I stood, slowly, carefully, as though each step etched the truth deeper into me. I was no longer theirs. No longer a daughter, no longer an heir. Outwardly, I looked calm, but inside, a sharpness was forming, a vow-taking root. Outside, the world hadn't changed. Cars honked, sunlight cut through the clouds, strangers hurried down sidewalks. But I had changed. I wasn't broken, not yet. I wasn't defeated. I was silent. Silent enough that they wouldn't see the storm beginning to stir inside me. They thought they had stripped me of everything, but they had overlooked one thing. I knew the veins of their empire, the hidden currents of money that fed the illusion of their power. I had managed payrolls, accounts, transactions for years. I had memorized passwords, coded systems, and buried connections no one else bothered to understand. Those streams were still open to me, and veins can be severed. That night, lying on the floor of my cramped apartment with nothing but a suitcase and my laptop, my father's voice replayed in my head like a curse. You were never cut out for this. Over and over the words echoed. And yet, curses can turn into fuel if you let them burn long enough. I opened my laptop, logged in. Their empire unfolded on the screen in neat rows of numbers and transfers. It was all there, suppliers, mortgages, utilities, wages. I didn't tremble. I didn't rage. I simply hovered my finger above a button. One click, $120,000 to a supplier, canceled. Another click, the utilities account, suspended. Another, mortgage transfers locked in frozen queues. Every cancellation felt like air filling my lungs again, like pulling pieces of myself back from the grave they thought they buried me in. Lucas texted me within days. A single smug sentence glowed on my phone. Hope you're settling into your new reality. I laughed quietly to myself. If only he knew what reality was about to feel like. A month later, the silence broke. My phone buzzed at 7:43 a.m. My mother. A short, clipped message. Mortgages due. No warmth, no plea, no recognition. Just expectation, as if I was still their safety net. I stared at the words, my hand steady, my heart unshaken. Then I typed my reply. 2 words. Brutal, final. Not mine. I hit send. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't lost everything. They had. It wasn't rage that filled me anymore. It was something colder, steadier, an unfamiliar stillness that tasted like iron and freedom. After years of bending under their weight, I'd slipped their chains, and freedom always cuts deeper when you seize it back yourself. The morning after I sent the message, not mine, I braced for silence. Instead, my phone erupted, glowing and buzzing like a fire alarm. Lucas called first, his name flashing across the screen. What did you do? No greeting, no pause. Then 2 missed calls from my father, back to back. He'd never leave a voicemail. Pride had always been his armor. Finally, a text from my mother, don't be childish. Family helps family. I almost laughed out loud. Family, the same family that had shoved me out of a mahogany-lined office, as if I were a trespasser instead of a daughter. By noon, my inbox chimed with an alert from the bank. 3 large transfers frozen, flagged as suspicious. My moves were no longer invisible. I shut the laptop with deliberate calm, like a surgeon putting down her scalpel, and pictured panic creeping through their veins like frost. That night, Lucas came to my apartment. He pounded on my door as though it belonged to him, his voice echoing down the hallway, sharp, commanding. Open the damn door, Marissa. I didn't. I stood in the dark, still as a shadow, watching his own silhouette shift beneath the crack of the door. He cursed, kicked once, then delivered the words I'd been waiting for. You'll regret this. But he left, and in the hush that followed, my pulse stayed steady. Regret no longer lived here. The next day, whispers trickled in through a friend still at the company. Suppliers were calling without pause. Mortgage payments on key properties were overdue. A utility company threatened to cut power to one of the warehouses. Lucas was flailing, my father raging. And my mother? She was the one sending frantic texts now. Please, think of the family name. The irony burned. I had thought of that name my entire life. I'd polished it, protected it, fought for it. And when the time came, they stripped it from me as if it were a coat I'd borrowed and worn too long. Now, their empire bled from cuts they never thought to guard against. And this was only the opening act. The calls shifted tone. Anger gave way to desperation. By the end of the week, I got a voicemail from my father, the same man who once told me, "You were never cut out for this." His voice, usually forged of iron, trembled with something I'd never heard before, fear. Marissa, we need to talk. You don't understand what's at stake. Just call me back. I didn't. Instead, that night I walked through the city with a lightness I'd never felt, as if my ribs were no longer a cage. Neon signs blinked on slick pavement. Traffic hummed, swallowing my thoughts except for one. They finally know what it feels like to need me. Lucas had never been built for pressure. I'd seen it in boardrooms where numbers twisted against him. He'd sweat, joke, charm, always passing the weight to someone else. But now no one was left to catch it. Deals collapsed. A warehouse lost power mid-shipment. Reputation dipped like a sinking stone. My mother tried last. Her text was so unlike her, I had to read it twice. Marissa, please. This isn't about money anymore. We could lose everything. You don't want that. But she was wrong. I did want that. Not from cruelty, but because it had never truly been mine to lose. They had made sure of that. I stood at my window, watching headlights streak across the avenue like falling stars, and whispered the truth I'd never dared speak aloud. I don't belong to them anymore. It felt like the first real prayer I had ever believed in. The next morning, a letter slid under my door. No return address, but the handwriting stopped my breath. My father's. Inside, one trembling line. Meet me before it's too late. For the first time since this began, the ground shifted beneath me. I met him at a dim cafe on the edge of downtown, the kind of place my father would normally pass without a glance. He was a man of glass towers and marble floors, but desperation drives even kings into alleys. He was already seated when I walked in, shoulders slumped, suit creased, hands gripping a chipped mug as though it might anchor him. For the first time, he looked small. Marissa, he said, rising halfway before sinking back down. Thank you for coming. I slid into the booth opposite, silent. I let the weight of his unease spread between us like smoke. He cleared his throat, voice low. You don't understand what you've done. The mortgage is overdue. Suppliers are threatening lawsuits. If this continues, I cut him off with a single look. For years I had been the daughter who listened, who nodded, who obeyed. Now I let silence speak for me. He faltered, leaning forward, desperation raw in his eyes. We can fix this. But the space between us had already become something else. an unbridgeable divide built of every word and wound left unspoken. He tried to sound generous, but the words cracked as they left his lips. "I can bring you back in," he said quietly. "Not as much as Lucas, of course, but a share. Something respectable. Respectable." The word slid across the table like a shard of glass. Scraps from a table I had built with my own hands. He said it as though he were offering charity, not recompense. I kept my voice even. "You didn't just cut me out, Dad. You erased me. And now you want me to save you." For a heartbeat, shame flickered across his face, so quick I might have missed it if I wasn't looking. His mouth opened, closed. For once, he had no prepared speech, no script, no trick to control the room. The cafe's low murmur pressed in. Rain against the windows, spoons striking porcelain, voices rising and falling like background music. I rose from my chair slowly, pushing it back until the legs rasped against the floor. His hand reached for mine, trembling. I didn't take it. Leaning forward just enough for my words to reach him, I whispered, "You made your choice. Now live with it." Then I turned and walked out, leaving him in that booth surrounded by strangers who had no idea they were watching a dynasty crumble in real time. By week's end, it wasn't whispers anymore. It was headlines. Hale Enterprises faces liquidity crisis. Suppliers withdraw amid leadership turmoil. Lucas's face, the same face that had once smirked down from magazine covers, now stared hollowly from news articles tagged with words like failure and incompetent. I read each one slowly, almost ceremonially, as if I were flipping the pages of a book I'd been waiting my whole life to finish. One night, I drove past the headquarters. Through the tinted glass, I caught a glimpse of him, my father, pacing the boardroom, tie loose, hair wild, slamming a file on the table and shouting at ghosts. His reflection looked like his enemy now. The same man who had ordered me to leave was clawing to stay afloat. Then my phone buzzed. Not my parents. Not Lucas. An unknown number. "She's crying," the message read. "Your mother. She's terrified. Are you really going to let them lose everything?" I didn't reply, because the truth was they hadn't lost everything. They'd taken everything from me first. But silence wasn't as easy anymore. In the quiet of my small apartment, guilt scratched at the edges like a stray cat. I thought of my mother's voice, of the house I had grown up in. And then I thought of her silence in that lawyer's office, the way she'd sat, unmoving, as I was cut out of my own life. That had been her choice. My silence now was mine. The company's collapse rolled like a storm, fast, merciless, impossible to outrun. For the first time, Lucas had no umbrella, no shield. He was bare to the world. And I, cast out, discarded, watched as the empire disintegrated grain by grain. Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers until the walls crumble. It was Lucas who came first, not my father. He stood outside my apartment in the rain, hair plastered to his forehead, suit jacket clinging to him like a costume from a better time. When I opened the lobby door, he didn't smirk. He didn't even speak at first. His eyes were hollow, his mouth trembling, as though he was choking on his pride. "They're going to take the house," he said finally. "Not our house. Not the family house. Just the house. Stripped of ownership. Stripped of security." I said nothing. I let the silence stretch, sharp as a blade. He stepped closer, voice low. "Marissa, I can't do this." I thought I could, but he stopped, rubbing his face. "You have to stop. Please." The same man who had shoved me out of an office now stood in a doorway begging. And yet, instead of triumph, what rose in me was colder. Clarity. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about the truth. They had built their empire on control, not loyalty. On taking, not giving. That evening my mother called. Her voice was cracked, shaking. "Your father's in the hospital," she said. "Stress. The doctor says it's serious. Marissa, please come." I stood at the window of my apartment, the city lights scattered below like embers. Her words echoed in my head, but I couldn't tell if she meant to summon guilt or forgiveness. Here's what she never understood. They'd already put me in a hospital once, not with walls or beds, but with exile, with silence, with the slow death of my worth. And now, as their kingdom collapsed, they wanted me to be their savior. But I wasn't their savior. I was their mirror. And mirrors don't lie. I went to the hospital, but not to rescue anyone. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and wilting flowers. My father lay pale against the sheets, monitors blinking. Lucas slumped in a chair, suit wrinkled, eyes red. My mother stood at the window, clutching her phone like it still had power to save her. When I walked in, their heads turned. For a second, hope flickered across their faces, the hope that I would step forward, slip back into the role of the good daughter who fixed their mistakes, covered their debts, carried their shame. But I didn't move closer. I stood at the foot of the bed, my hands steady, my voice quiet. "I'm not here to save what you broke," I said. "I'm here to tell you I survived it." My father's lips trembled, but no words came. Lucas lowered his gaze. My mother whispered my name like a prayer I no longer believed in. I reached into my bag and set an envelope on the bedside table. Inside were the last transfer codes I controlled, permanently canceled, signed away. Out of my hands forever. "There's nothing left for me to undo," I said softly. "It's yours now. All of it." Silence swelled in the room, heavier than the beeping machines. Then I turned and walked away. Outside, the air was cold but alive. I breathed it in deeply, letting it fill me in ways their empire never had. I wasn't walking away empty. I was walking away whole. For once, I wasn't defined by what they gave or what they took. I was defined by the fact that I had let go. And in letting go, I had won. Because true revenge isn't destruction. It's freedom.